G'day folks. Well, I figured I'd finish off the GM4L60E Autotrans teardown, at least partially, and give you a bit of an explanation on what part does what, assuming I can remember what goes where. I know this is the output shaft to the tail shaft. This is a north-south mounted rear-wheel drive transmission, so you just got a straight output shaft going to a tail shaft and then to a differential in the rear. Normally coupled with a Buick derived Australian built 3.8 litre V6 in the Holden Commodore. I think it's VS to almost present day. I think they still use the same 3.8 power plant, just in like an alloy overhead cam configuration today. I can't remember, I've never really studied them. Sort of like the Ford straight six that I run in my EB Fairmont stakes back to the 1960s. They've just gone from side valve or push rod overhead valve to single overhead cam to double overhead cam with variable valve timing, and now turbocharging and all that sort of stuff. They're both very old engines, but, well, they both have very old heritage, but they've been modified so much over the years you'd hardly recognise them if it weren't for the certain design traits, like the placing of the distributor on the one that I've got. It's under the inlet manifold, which would have normally been a much smaller, probably not even a crossflow manifold, and same with the Buick V6. It's even got a counterbalance shaft to make up for the two missing cylinders. It's basically a V8 that's been chopped down. They've modified the moulds and the tools and the dies to make a V8 into a V6, and there's a counterbalance shaft to make up for the missing two cylinders. At least in the older, earlier ones anyway. The newer ones, I'm sure they've worked everything out, but yeah, it's interesting stuff. So this is a GM, I think it's, what did I say, 4L60E electronic auto. I've got the oil pump, the front housing that the torque converter fits into. That's the stationary part that holds the, I think it holds the stator stationary, hence the name stator. That's the output shaft for the output planetary gears. These are, well, they're planetary gears. There's a sun gear in the middle, and there's a, well, that's a sun gear, planetary gears, and then there's an outer ring gear on the outside. A little thrust bearing inside there. But yeah, that fits in there. Autos are awesome to tear down. If you ever find one and you're mechanically minded and have a place to get oily and messy, i.e. not in your bedroom, it is well worth finding one and pulling it to bits. Preferably not one that's completely blown, because you get really nasty burnt autotrans fluid and it smells horrible and everything's covered in thick black sludge. So you're better off finding one that's had a minor failure like this one, which had a bad solenoid or a bad valve, and tear that down instead, because yeah, when they get bad, they get really bad. If I line everything up, that should slide straight in there and be the output planetary gearbox. This part here obviously has to be able to spin. One part of it should remain stationary. It's got to fit into one of these housings. I think that's the is it first reverse drum or something? Somebody was telling me what the actual staging is. I can't remember. I'm not going to go to that detail, but you can see a clutch pack in there just like this one. You've got stationary metal discs and moving clutch plates. Yeah, they rotate, and when pressure is applied by the hydraulics in the transmission, it compresses everything, and clutches do what clutches do. They slip up until you put enough pressure on them, and then they grab. And then, lo and behold, another part of the transmission starts spinning, like this drum assembly, or the shaft in between, inside it. That is input, I think. I think that's part of the input planetary gear set. That might be first. Might drive into first anyway. Yeah, I don't know. No, that's input. That's the stator. That's input shaft from the engine. This spins at engine speed, along with this core assembly that spins at engine speed. And then I think, no, you don't fit in there. Oh, it goes that way. And all those clutch discs, yeah, the tags on those clutch discs line up with those slots. Because this one's also full of clutch plates, clutch discs. So they all have to be nicely lined up, and then you drop that assembly into there. And there's another planetary gear set just behind that retainer. I'm going to have a lot of bits and pieces by the time I'm done. Well, let's start at the input end. Let's strip the oil pump down and have a look at that. Then we'll strip the input shaft down and have a look at that. And then we'll have a look at everything in between. I can't really break that down because it's all pinned into place, but yeah, that's part of the planetary gear set. You've got a sun gear in the middle and you've got planetary gears orbiting around the sun. Hence the name. It's like the solar system. We've got a sun in the middle and we've got planets orbiting around the outside. That's what they are. Ooh, look at this. This is pretty. This is like a variable displacement pump. We've got a pickup in here or something. There's a strainer going through. We've got two valves. Obviously, probably proportioning valves, pressure or overpressure relief valves. But we've also got this spring assembly on the pump housing, which allows this housing to move, so it must determine how much pressure it can actually displace by moving independently of the shaft. The input shaft stays in the one place, but the rest of this can actually move up and down to vary the volume of fluid, I guess. Not so much pressure, but volume. Yeah, this is very neat. There's a little perfectly ground seal in there. Yeah, it sits in there. There's a little bit of a peen mark there. Someone's whacked it with something. It's been apart before. I haven't done any of those. There's scratches. Yeah, this thing's... yeah, someone's had a bit of a go at it. There's a bit of sludge, but that's just caught between metallic surfaces. The fluid itself looked like that when we drained it. Not the healthiest, but again, it's had a hell of a hard life. It has been hooned or thrashed pretty damn hard. Bits of gasket coming off. So yeah, that looks like a variable volume and variable pressure pump. It's a vane type pump compared with the Toyota one that I stripped down a while ago, which was a gear type pump. Yeah, look at that with that little ring still in there. You can see how it works. Where's the inlet and outlet port? Oh, they'll be on this side here, of course. There's no ports in the side of this cast iron housing, which will come out, but the ports are in here. I'm thinking, yeah, that's the inlet port. That's got the rubber seal on it from the filter. So the auto trans filter snaps in the bottom, straight onto here. Pump sucks directly in through there into, if I flipped it right, yeah, straight into this sort of side of the housing, the larger side, and then it gets compressed down through here and forced out. So yeah, it's sort of a valve modulated variable displacement pump. Really neat. Yeah, it's a really neat bit of kit. Yeah, all of this will just come straight out if I'm violent enough. There we go. Oh, look at that. Little veins. Oops, what is that? I don't know. Got a little plastic seal spider. Those little veins. That's cool. Looks like forged iron by the looks of it. It's not cast. It is iron. It's been, I think it's high pressure forged iron. There's another one of those seals underneath. The pump's seen better days. There's a lot of scoring in that housing, but I'd be willing to bet this pump has a lot more life left in it, given the fact that it can vary its displacement. As new, it's probably dumping a lot of fluid back to the sump, but worn out, it's probably sitting more on its absolute limit, but it's still doing a 100% job. So that's kind of interesting. I look at these center punch marks in the casting too. I wonder why they did that to the tool. Maybe to help it grab and pull out on one side of the tool. It's obviously ejected from the other side, so I wonder if they had problems with the die casting machine leaving the casting in the wrong side of the tool, in the fixed side. Interesting. Alright, well that's the pump. Okay, so for the rest of it, well, I know it's a bit of a mess because I'm missing half the bits, but from what I've found out, there is no set gear sets. Like, there's no first, second, third, fourth and reverse. It's a combination of engaging clutch packs to add or subtract reduction ratios for the gears, and engaging a Sprag clutch and basically set of reversing gears for reverse. Or at least the Sprag clutch will reverse the rotation of the drum or something like that. I think this drum is integral to reverse. If you lock it up, the gear output gear set rotates clockwise. If you don't lock it, the gear set rotates counterclockwise. So that would be your reverse, unlike a manual where you've got separate gear sets. So yeah, it's all to do with just changing output ratios by locking up certain parts of the transmission. It's a little bit different. It's a learning experience, I'll give it that much. Again, and all that locking is done by these packs of clutch plates, which there are lots of. There's more in there and there's more in there. There's a lot of pieces. This one here, I think it was part of that. I think it went in there, and there's another drum missing. They are out the back. They're just very rusty now. It has been rained on. So anyway, I'm going to strip the input end down. Then we'll have a close look at that. Alright, so on the input side, we've got the main housing with what looks like a check valve in the centre of the shaft there. Probably to allow fluid through to the torque converter, because there is actually a valve in the end of it. This goes in first, which I'm guessing is the main hydraulic cylinder. Essentially, it acts like a hydraulic ram. That's snapped in under a clip. That's O-ring fitted to the centre of it. So it's all basic hydraulics by the look of it. And there's that, which also has a seal on it, designed to resist pressure from this side. It's a V seal. There's another piece and more springs. It's interesting, there's a hell of a lot of complexity. Yeah, there's a pressure plate. And there's a main seal assembly. Yeah, that's all rubber. That whole face there's rubber. So it must seal against that V in there. And just check flow of the oil. Yeah, so that goes down there. Then you. Then you. No. I think that's how you're supposed to go. Yeah, it's basically how they all go in. Something like that. Oh well, that's that side done. Oh, don't worry, there's also more. There are clutch packs. Yeah, there's a friction material. And the bits that lock into the housing and those teeth. Oh, there's a Sprag clutch in there. Where are you? Oh, you're in there. Yeah, the rest of those are just friction discs. They're not important. Same with the second set. More of them. You can see why it's expensive to rebuild an auto. If you do all these clutches and things, that's a lot of clutches. Yeah, there's a one-way clutch in here, a Sprag clutch. It allows it to spin that direction, but it will not allow it to spin the other direction. That's part of your reverse system. So depending on what part gets locked up, it'll allow the output shaft to spin in one direction. And these things here were pressing against part of the outer pack, I think part of that. So yeah, that's not part of it, that's part of the rest of it. But yeah, that's got a Sprag clutch in it, which I can actually take out. I'll take that clip out. Yeah, there's little preload spring assemblies. Very interesting. Still very oily. It's been sitting around draining for a while, but it's obviously getting trapped in a number of different places. Ah yes, a cam clutch, aka a Sprag clutch. These little thingamajigs, these little cams or levers, depending which direction you drag them in, if I drag them this way, they sort of toe in and want to wedge against the housing on the outside, locking it up. If I drag it the other way, like that way, they sort of just drag across the surface and don't do anything. That's basically how they're designed to work, and they grab very tightly. You can see there's a lot of bite marks, a bit of wear, but it's all very hard material. So yeah, they're designed to slip in one direction, and then regardless of how much oil's on them, they tilt and wedge tightly between the inner and the outer, locking the assembly completely. They're a very neat little device. I learned about these a long time ago when I was a kid. Dad gave me an old Mazda Auto to pull to bits and told me about some of the parts. I don't remember much of it, but I do remember having one of these on my desk for many years. Just cleaned up, degreased it nicely, and it barely ever even rusted. It's such good material. Getting them back together is fun. But anyway, that's a Sprag clutch. It's like a one-way bearing essentially. That's unlocked and that's locked. They just jam in there and they bite hard, really hard. So that's that one. Let's move on to the rest of it and get that out of the way so I can move on to some other things. You've already seen the planetary. Planetaries are planetaries. So that one can basically go. But we'll have a look at the drum here. I think this is a reverse drum, part of what that Sprag clutch engages. I think. I'm not 100% sure, but I think that's what it engages. Because that goes on there. Look at that. You can well imagine if that's rotating in one direction and that locks in, or sorry, the drive locks in a different way. Or, no, sorry, if the housing that this fits onto is suddenly locked up, that shaft's going to want to turn a different direction. So I believe that's how it all works. Reverse is via a series of different clutches engaging, forcing the Sprag clutch to lock up, and then you get your reverse. There is no actual reverse gear set in an auto. It's all done through clutching. Fascinating stuff. Well, I'm just shuffling the clutches into the scrap metal bin, and I think I found the burnout gear. It's either first or second or both. Look at that, it's just starting to come off. It's all bubbled. That one's stripped. That one's okay. You can still see some hot spots on the steel plates and very uneven marks. Like that there, that one's warped. Contact, contact, contact. Yeah. That side's sort of okay, it's got about 1/2 mil. That side's almost touching metal. That one's touching metal. And that one is. That one's gone. Separate. That side's sorta okay, but that one there is blistering and just about to come apart, just like that other one. That one's burnt. So it's either first or second, knowing what Commodores are like, and lead foots. It's murderized that gear, or that clutch pack anyway. That's sort of what I expected. I knew this auto wasn't happy. Even with the solenoid issue, it wouldn't have lasted much longer if I'd repaired it. Tearing it to bits is way more fun, especially when there's so many of them kicking around. I'll keep that. Too bad it's not bigger. I can make a bracelet out of that. If anyone has a girlfriend with really small hands and arms, you could probably use that as a bracelet, but personally I don't know anyone who could fit that. Need a bigger one. But yeah, clutch discs. Interesting stuff. And that's what's in here too. I'll open that up and that'll be it. End of story. I really got to admire the guy who actually thought of this. How he designed and built an automatic transmission. I realise the earlier ones were a lot more simple, but still a hell of a lot of engineering ideas and knowledge go into these things. Even if they're mass produced or not, it's still a hell of a lot of engineering, a lot of parts, a lot of diagrams, a lot of mathematics and physics, fluid dynamics, you name it, the lot. It's yeah, fascinating stuff. Okay, well this segment's not much different to the first one. Again, it's got a pressure plate inside it and essentially a ram plunger. Soon as pressure builds behind it from hydraulic fluid, not sure where it goes in. Oh, it'll go in through there actually. It comes through the centre of the shaft. So it comes in down past here and compresses these clutch discs, which are in really good condition. This must be like third or fourth gear. So there's plenty of material on there. You can still see the little slits in them for letting fluid out. That's in pretty good condition. They're worn, but they're not down to metal. So yeah, there's not much else to do with this one. You can still see the stationary part of the pack and the moving part of the pack. Made in Canada, 97, 96. Yeah. It's a reasonably old auto. It's 90s, but again, not too bad. Some nice coil springs in there. I'll have to harvest them if I can get them off the base. I think they're actually spot welded or crimped. No, they're flare crimped onto it. Oh, it doesn't matter. And yeah, as you've seen before, that's a planetary gear set. Fascinating little thing. No real use for anyone around here anyway. I can't justify keeping it, but it's a bit of a shame. I've got enough ornaments sitting around. I've got to get this stuff out of here. And thanks for watching. I'm going to load up the scrap metal bin and dump it. I will keep one of the burnt up clutches for Harley to give to his mate who managed to almost murderize the transmission. Is that just lucky that the solenoid failed before the clutches failed? It was canned because it was slamming into gear, and one of the local highway patrolmen decided he was doing burnouts or something and threatened with car confiscation. So yeah, that's Victoria for you. Accidentally spin your wheels and you're intentionally doing a burnout according to the police, and they will confiscate and impound your car. If you've had offences before, they'll often take the car and crush it. You gotta love living in Victoria when it comes to owning cars. It's a bit of a police state, but yeah, what can you do? That's how this auto got replaced, because of that kind of bullshit. Mind you, slamming into first gear to the point where it actually spins the wheels is not good for your drive shaft unis or your diff. So it's probably a good thing it was replaced. Anyway, thanks for watching.